What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about SoFi. I want to go over some of the data points, break it down on what moved it today, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So SoFi went down 1.15%, did have a pretty good start to the day. So 28.37 the high, 27.23 the low. So during the first half of the trading day, no different than yesterday, you actually did have a lot of institutional transactions. And then the broader market kind of took hold of it. And then you had some institutions selling. So I'll break it down on why each kind of did occur. But today we had roughly around 44 million shares being traded. Most of the volume actually did come associated to algorithmic trading. So today was a very big data-driven day. So for instance, first thing, we did have building permits, both for October and September. Both came in better than anticipated. To counter that, we did have housing starts similarly for September as well as October. They came for a little bit worse for wear. So again, they kind of countered each other out. Non-farm payroll came in at 50,045 was the forecast, and then unemployment surprisingly came in at 4.4. Forecast of 4.6. So that is good. Unfortunately, as I've mentioned in the past, market doesn't want good, especially for labor. It wants like at par or a little bit worse. So unfortunately, this, in my opinion, did really pop the likelihood of a cut for the upcoming January 28th meeting. So most likely we'll have to wait up until March. One thing that also did come out though was Michigan consumer sentiment, and it surprisingly came in hotter than anticipated. So came in at 54, forecast of 52.7. You had a Fed speaker pretty much saying that the whole inflation is still one of the economy's main challenges, and that is a very big surprise. And during the last minutes, that's actually why the market was somewhat volatile last FOMC minutes, is because as far as a investor, we knew that Powell and the Feds were looking at housing as well as labor. We were under the impression that inflation was pretty a-okay. And then Powell really dropped the bomb saying, hey, you know what? Inflation's actually a main concern. We're really watching it. So came out of left field. So again, something just to keep in mind. The broader market was somewhat holding its breath as well during the trading day because of this. So my apologies, I didn't actually bring this up, but Supreme Court tariff ruling. So ultimately, there was no decision made, and it got pushed to January the 14th. So that's going to be something fun to think about over the weekend, and that most likely will impact the broader market next week. So as far as that, so that's pretty much it, what really did impact the broader market. In theory, Trump did actually do another update that potentially could help SoFi. So I brought this up in my video yesterday on how Trump was going to be banning institutions from purchasing single-family homes. So in theory, as much as I think that would be very bullish overall, I think that's very negative because it would impact the housing prices. But coming from a SoFi investor standpoint, it should increase the mortgages. But Trump actually did further clarify, and he said that I am instructing my representatives to buy $200 billion in mortgage bonds, so thus being able to drive the rates down. So again, my main concern that I thought was a negative yesterday, based on this, technically that's good, like if you think about it. So no matter what, that should really help SoFi. So maybe as long as this comes to fruition, you might see mortgages kind of increasing. So definitely good to see more revenue for SoFi, win-win overall. Aside from all of that though, shorts did return 316,000 shares, 9.75% of the free floats being shorted, works out to be 120.82 million shares overall being shorted. So both sketchy points I've been bringing up, so the naked shorting and cost to borrow minimum being negative, they both went poof. So again, just kind of monitor that. DTC is starting to inch up, so 1.92 days, so it does signal that shorts are very overextended. One thing to consider though is DTC does factor in the average volume in comparison to number of shares being shorted. And so since SoFi's average volume has been kind of dropping alongside every stock for the most part, that is why it is kind of going higher. So it's just metrics behind the scenes. In reality, today we did see about 34 million in calls, 8.4 in puts, and then 44% of all the options being done. were bearish in nature. With today being Friday and it closing exactly at 27.40, that does mean that the 27 and below strike prices are in the money. So just to give you an overview of that, we have 11,000 at that 27, 5,000 at the 26.50, 3,000 at the 26. There is some transactions occurring on the actual secondary market that does already match with market makers covering that. No different than actually last Friday. Somehow market makers are now on top of it and want to cover it straight away, because normally that would cause a little bit of a bump up come Monday. And for those of you that watched my channel for the last year or several years when I covered SoFi, you'd know that there's been some pretty interesting gamma squeezes that has kind of occurred because of options. So there was a couple big ones that was done after hours. So $1.5 million or 1.5 million shares, $43.7 million overall. So that most likely was just market makers covering. There was also some other good transactions being done after hours. But again, as I mentioned, just based on this right here, you see a lot of transactions that are most likely selling. And so institutions kind of sold leading into there, because going into this weekend, a lot of people are going to be speculating on what is going to be coming next because of this. So the whole court ruling is going to be a pain ultimately, I think, over this weekend. A lot of people are going to be speculating. And as you can kind of even see, will the Supreme Court rule in favor of Trump's tariffs? And that's only sitting at 30.6. I think it's kind of gone up a little bit to like 35, if I remember correctly, but still 30s for the most part. Aside from all of that though, with it closing at 27.40, it is smack dab in the middle between this R1 and the pivot. So 26.93 is going to be the next strong support. Wasn't tested today, and I don't believe was even tested yesterday. 27.58 and 27.98 is going to be the next strong target / resistance points. So when SoFi was moving higher, these didn't really cause much kind of hesitation whatsoever. So I wouldn't really consider either of these very strong. But today we did see SoFi now for the second time get rejected. And what I mean by that is it did break past that 50-day moving average. And in SoFi's case and a lot of other growth stocks, 50-day moving average is a very, very big deal. So yesterday, SoFi had a phenomenal day, but unfortunately kind of rejected off of that and consolidated, which is normal. That's what happens whenever you hit a very strong support or a resistance and you bounce off of that, you consolidate. That's what happens. And so today, SoFi did take another run at it. Unfortunately, did get slapped around. Largely because of the broader market, but most likely what that does mean is further consolidation. So where it did land is it landed right on that 100-day moving average. So that's sitting at 27.38. So going into next week, it's going to be a very interesting week. It's going to come down to Monday whether this 100-day moving average is going to be able to hold or not. But stay tuned for my video over the weekend where I go over some expectations and kind of some general things to be aware of. But the fact that it did bounce off of that 50-day moving average usually does mean that further consolidation might be occurring in the next little bit. So let me know your thoughts on SoFi. Did everything come out according to plan? In my opinion, I know the market is very fixated on rate cuts, but technically, aside from Michigan consumer sentiment, this data right here, so non-farm payroll and unemployment, came in pretty a-okay. And unemployment, that was for December. So the whole shutdown did come to a conclusion. I think it was November 12th or 13th, somewhere around that time frame. So a lot of previous data was partial or just wasn't good. So this right here is pretty, again, a-okay if you ask me. So let me know your thoughts on SoFi. What's your general viewpoint on kind of everything that's been happening in the broader market? One final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you're looking for some solid on-point buy signals on stocks, options, crypto. Put out daily day trades, numerous swing trades, worthwhile to pop over there and check that out. With all that, appreciate all you watching.